There is a moment in every life where silence speaks louder than thunder, where the absence of certainty becomes the sharpest teacher. When we hear the words, "Tomorrow is not safe," it does not come as a prophecy of fear, but as a whisper of sacred urgency. The mind, so easily tangled in plans, illusions, and assumptions, must now confront its greatest denial: that time is never guaranteed. To truly grasp this truth is not merely an intellectual act. It is an awakening that strikes the soul like lightning strikes dry earth. It cracks open what was asleep. It reveals the truth hidden beneath convenience and comfort. Most people live as if life owes them something. They walk through their days in a daze, postponing their power, delaying their dreams, assuming the sun will rise again just because it did yesterday. But the truth is not governed by repetition. The truth is governed by impermanence. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? A face, perhaps, growing older, eyes that have seen both light and shadow, a body that changes with time. Yet beneath all of this, there is something constant. The observer, the witness, the breath. That is who you are. That is where your power rests. And that observer does not belong to tomorrow. It exists only now. So to live for tomorrow is to betray the essence of who you are. To think that you will act later, speak truth later, become strong later, is to hand your power to something that may never arrive. Life is not found in the clock ticking forward. Life is found in the breath you are taking now. Every inhale is a gift. Every exhale is a choice. What will you do with this single breath? Will you waste it in worry, or will you plant it into intention? You see, there is a secret the monks have long understood. Urgency is not anxiety. Urgency is alignment. It means you understand the preciousness of the moment. You feel the weight of it, not in fear but in honor. Like a swordsman who sharpens his blade not out of panic but out of devotion. He knows the battle is always near, not because he lives in fear but because he respects reality. Tomorrow is not safe. That does not mean you must run, it means you must awaken. What does awakening look like? It looks like this. When the sun rises, you rise with it. Not reluctantly, but deliberately. You place your feet on the ground and give thanks, not out of habit, but because you understand that this day was not promised. You sit in silence, not because it's trendy or spiritual, but because you know that silence reveals what noise conceals. You train your body, not to become beautiful, but because strength is responsibility. You discipline your thoughts, not to become popular, but because a sharp mind is a necessary tool in a world that blunts your awareness every day. This is how a warrior lives. Not a warrior of violence, but a warrior of presence. One who shows up completely. One who understands that every conversation might be their last. Every embrace might be the final one. Every moment might be the closing page of their book. And so they give everything, not because they are afraid, but because they are free. There is a graveyard full of unspoken truths, unshared love, unfulfilled dreams. And the only thing that stopped those dreams from being lived was the belief in tomorrow. The belief that there would be more time. But life does not wait for you to feel ready. The mountain will not lower itself to meet your hesitation. You must rise. You must climb now. People often ask, but what if I fail? That question belongs to tomorrow. The real question is, will I act while I still can? That belongs to today. That belongs to power. Fear of failure is born when you live in the outcome. Presence is born when you live in the action. If you knew this was your final sunrise, how would you move differently? Would you hold grudges? Would you scroll endlessly through distractions? Would you doubt your worth? No. You would speak clearly. You would forgive deeply. You would give freely. You would live fully. Why? Because you would finally be honest about what matters. And the irony is this: what matters on your last day always mattered. It always did. You just forgot. To live as if tomorrow is not safe is not to become paranoid. It is to become precise. You do not waste words. You do not waste time. You do not keep your gifts hidden behind insecurity. You move with intention. You speak with clarity. You love without hesitation. This is not recklessness. This is sacred urgency. The ancient monks say that when death walks into a room, truth walks in with it. In the face of impermanence, everything false dissolves. Titles, status, ego, all of it burns away. And what remains is your essence, your courage, your stillness, your love, your integrity. Why wait until the end to live with that clarity? Why wait for death to remind you how to live? There is a fire inside you that you have ignored. You called it discomfort, anxiety, restlessness. But it is none of those things. It is your soul asking you to move, to rise, to remember that you were not born to merely survive time. You were born to use it with discipline and devotion. You were born to turn each moment into a temple. Look around you. How many people do you know who say, "One day I'll start. One day I'll heal. One day I'll speak up. One day I'll pursue my truth." But one day becomes someday. Someday becomes never. And then the end comes, and regret becomes the final teacher. But that is not your path. You are hearing this message because your soul is awake. You are ready to walk differently, to breathe differently, to move like a flame, not a flicker. The wind is changing. The world is shifting. The signs are everywhere. Chaos outside, confusion inside, and in the midst of this, a divine message echoes. Tomorrow is not safe, not as a curse, but as a calling, not as a threat, but as a reminder. A reminder that safety does not come from the calendar. It comes from how you choose to live. Right now. You must stop lying to yourself. Stop pretending you need more preparation, more validation, more approval. You have what you need. You have always had it. The power is not waiting for you in the future. It is waiting for you to recognize it in this breath. So, rise. Not tomorrow. Now. Forgive. Not when they deserve it. Now. Speak your truth. Not when it's easy. Now. Train your body, not when you feel like it. Now. Honor your soul, not when the world gives you permission. Now. Because now is all you have. And that is enough. The path of mastery is not complicated, it is just rare. Most people will continue to drift, to delay, to wait. But you must become rare. You must become the one who chooses discipline over delay, clarity over confusion, truth over comfort. And that choice must be made every single day, not once, not occasionally, but every moment you are awake. Every time you want to retreat, remember, retreat is the luxury of those who think they have time. You do not. You only have this breath, this heartbeat, this day. So when the world says, you can wait, you respond, I move now. When the mind says, it's not safe, you say, it's never been. And when the soul whispers, this is the moment, you listen, you trust, and you act. Because the warrior does not ask for guarantees, he asks only for clarity. And when he receives it, he moves. You have received the clarity, you have heard the call. Do not wait, do not hesitate. Live as if this is your last day, and you will discover that it is also your best. There are many who hear the words tomorrow is not safe, and instantly they recoil. Their breath shortens, their heart tightens, their thoughts begin to scatter. Fear moves in like a fog, dense and consuming. But this fear is not the problem. The problem is that most people do not know what fear truly is. They believe fear is the enemy. They believe that the presence of fear means the absence of strength. But this is a misunderstanding of the highest order. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is the signal. Fear is the teacher. Fear is the doorway. In the ancient path of the warrior monk, it was never said that fear must be destroyed. No. It was understood that fear is the guardian of growth. It stands at the gates of your next evolution, not to keep you out, but to test whether you are truly ready to enter. When the voice of the divine says, "Tomorrow is not safe," the intention is not to make you tremble. It is to make you aware. It is to help you see clearly. It is to show you that you are not walking through a game, but through sacred terrain, and that each step must be taken with presence, not assumption. Fear sharpens you, like a blade against a whetstone. It removes what is dull. When you feel fear, your senses heighten, your breath deepens, you become alert, you begin to question, observe, analyze. This is the gift of fear. It invites you to wake up. But only the wise know this. The unaware, when fear arises, collapse. They hide, they delay, they pray for comfort instead of preparing for challenge. They numb themselves with distraction instead of refining themselves through discipline. If tomorrow is not safe, then today becomes sacred. This is the pivot point, the shift from panic to purpose. If you truly accept that nothing is guaranteed, then your choices begin to change. No more wasting time with meaningless conflict. No more procrastinating what your soul already knows it must do. No more pretending you don't hear the call. You hear it. You've always heard it. You just let fear disguise itself as confusion. Let us examine this more deeply. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a cliff, and below is the life you say you want. Truth, strength, discipline, freedom, impact. Everything you have ever whispered to the stars for. And the only way across is to leap. Fear stands beside you and says, "What if you fall?" But you must listen more carefully. Because underneath that question is another question, one that fear always hides. What if you fly? The purpose of fear is to give you that moment of reflection. It is not there to stop you from acting. It is there to make sure that when you act with your whole being. Half-hearted action is what leads to regret. But when you move through fear with full presence, that is when transformation happens. That is when the spiritual becomes real. That is when the hidden power inside you begins to awaken. We must remember, fear is primal. It is built into your system. It is a gift of your biology, not a defect. But the modern world has misunderstood it. The modern world has been conditioned to seek comfort above clarity. People surround themselves with conveniences and call that peace. But it is not peace, it is stagnation. It is avoidance dressed as ease. True peace is not the absence of challenge. It is the presence of strength in the middle of it. And fear, when faced with stillness, becomes fuel. The monks teach that when fear arises, you do not run. You breathe deeper, you slow down, you look directly into it, and you ask it, "What are you trying to teach me?" Because fear always carries a lesson. Always. If you fear speaking truth, then your path is to strengthen your voice. If you fear being alone, then your path is to find stillness within solitude. If you fear failure, then your path is to learn surrender and persistence. There is no fear without a path through it. The path is not away from fear, but into it. This is why fear must not be judged, it must be listened to. If you feel afraid about what tomorrow might bring, use that fear as fire. Use it to move more deliberately today. Use it to wake up earlier. Use it to apologize where needed. Use it to say what you've been holding back. Use it to train your body, sharpen your mind, discipline your energy. Because tomorrow is not promised, but this breath is. And if you can meet fear within this breath, you have already begun to walk the path of the awakened one. When you resist fear, it grows. When you avoid it, it finds you in another form. But when you sit with it fully and without distraction, something changes. You begin to see that the fear itself is not solid, it is a passing cloud, and beneath it Your clarity waits like the sun. When you become still, when you stop feeding the noise, the sun returns. To live with fear and not be controlled by it is a higher discipline. It means you train your inner world until your response is not emotional collapse, but spiritual poise. When you hear a warning like, "Tomorrow is not safe," you don't spiral. You center, you observe, you gather your focus, you understand that safety was never the point. Mastery is. Safety is an illusion. Life is not designed to keep you comfortable, it is designed to keep you conscious. Everything is a test, a teaching, an invitation to deepen your alignment. Even danger is not a punishment, it is a signal. It asks, have you been living in truth? Have you been wasting your time? Have you been postponing what matters? These are the questions that only fear brings to the surface. Most of the world runs from these questions. They escape into entertainment, into social distractions, into false urgency. But all of these are attempts to mute the voice inside, the voice that already knows the truth. But you cannot mute it forever. Life will turn up the volume, especially when tomorrow grows uncertain. So instead of running, return. Return to the core. Return to the breath. Return to the present. In the now, there is no future to fear. In the now, there is only action or inaction, clarity or confusion, power or paralysis. And you are the one who chooses, not life, not the world, not fate, you. That is your ultimate responsibility and your liberation. There is a strength inside you that fear cannot destroy. It may challenge it, it may question it, but it cannot remove it. Because your strength is not external, it is your essence. It is the awareness that watches the fear. It is the decision that moves despite fear. That is where your liberation lives. Not in the disappearance of fear, but in the rise of discipline. You do not need more time to be fearless. You need more stillness to hear what fear is asking. You do not need to become invincible. You need to become inwardly anchored. The ocean will always have waves, but you can become the mountain under the sea. Unshaken, rooted, watching. And so, when the voice says, tomorrow is not safe, bow to it, not in fear, in reverence. It is a gift, that voice. It is a compass. It means you are awake enough to hear. You are not like the others who sleepwalk through time. You have ears to listen, eyes to see, a heart that still feels, a soul that is ready. Use that readiness. Do not waste it on waiting. Waiting is the slow death of destiny. You are not meant to be passive. You are meant to be present. That is the only safety you truly have. Your presence. Your ability to meet life as it is, with eyes open and spine straight. That is what it means to walk the warrior's path. So take your fear and place it before you like a mirror. See what it shows you. Study it. Train with it. Thank it. And then act anyway, not recklessly, but with refined courage. Because fear has no power over the one who walks in purpose. And the mountain does not fear the wind. It welcomes it because it knows what it is rooted in. Be the mountain and let fear be your wind. There is a moment in a person's life when time stops. Not because the clock is broken, but because the soul recognizes something deeper. The outer noise begins to fade, and a stillness rises from within, like the surface of a mountain lake before dawn. In that stillness, there are no words, no explanations, only a knowing, a subtle pulse that says, now is all you have. This is not something the mind can understand fully. It is something the heart must remember. In this stillness, the teachings become clear. When the divine says tomorrow is not safe, it is not to cause panic, but to return you to presence. And from presence, true clarity begins to emerge. You start to see what truly matters, what has always mattered, and what never did. The illusion of later vanishes. The stories you've told yourself about someday are stripped away, and what remains is this moment, raw and unfiltered. It is in this moment that the invitation to alignment is given. Alignment is not a concept. It is not an idea you can read about or think your way into. It is a state of being that arises when your thoughts, your words, your actions, and your inner truth all move together, like the flow of a river that knows exactly where it's going. But most people do not live in alignment. They live in fragments. Their thoughts move in one direction, their speech in another, and their actions somewhere else entirely. And then they wonder why they feel lost, why they feel tired, why they feel distant from their own life. It is because they are out of sync with their own essence. Alignment begins when excuses end. The soul cannot align with anything false. It will resist, it will ache, it will send signs, confusion, heaviness, tension, restlessness. These are not problems to be solved. They are signals from within, reminding you that something is off. The body does not lie. The spirit does not lie. Only the mind does. The mind will say, it's okay to keep pretending. The soul will whisper, it's time to return to truth. When tomorrow is not promised, what excuse remains to delay that return? The world often pulls you in many directions. There are endless opinions, expectations, and distractions. People telling you what success is, what happiness is, what safety is. But none of these voices know your truth. None of them sit in meditation with you. None of them carry your breath. That belongs to you. And that is where alignment lives. Not in the opinions of others, but in the silence you dare to face. The most powerful form of strength is internal clarity. When you know who you are and you walk in that knowing, no storm can shake you. You do not need to shout it. You do not need to prove it. It is quiet, but it is unmistakable. A grounded presence, like an old tree rooted deep in the soil, unmoved by the seasons. But reaching that state is not passive. It requires conscious effort. It requires that you observe yourself deeply, that you listen not to the voice of fear, not to the voice of comparison, but to the quiet voice within that has been waiting for you to slow down, waiting for you to ask what truly matters, waiting for you to stop betraying your own heart. When you live in alignment, you begin to move differently. You no longer speak just to fill silence. You speak only when it is true. You no longer say yes to things that drain your spirit. You no longer surround yourself with people who pull you away from your path. You no longer compromise your values for temporary approval. Alignment sharpens your discernment. It makes you aware of what you are feeding and what is feeding you. It makes you intentional. Intentional living is not just about doing the right things. It's about doing things from the right state, a clear mind, a steady heart, a focused purpose. When these three are aligned, even your smallest actions carry power. Your walk becomes meditation. Your breath becomes prayer. Your presence becomes healing. People around you feel it. They may not know why, but they sense something different. It's as if it is because you are no longer leaking energy. You are no longer living two lives, one on the outside and one on the inside. You are whole. This wholeness is not found in perfection. It is found in honesty. It is found when you are willing to face your contradictions and choose truth over convenience. Many people know what they should do. They know what their soul is asking for, but they delay. They wait for the right time, the right sign, the right mood, and in waiting, they drift further from alignment. But when you know tomorrow is not guaranteed, hesitation loses its power. Clarity rises. You realize the only time to align is now. Not next month, not after someone else changes, now. And this alignment does not require you to fix everything. It simply requires you to stop lying to yourself. You do not have to be perfect to be aligned. You only need to be real. When you align with your inner truth, your decisions begin to reflect your deepest values. Your priorities shift. You are no longer guided by fear or by trends. You are guided by something deeper. Your Dharma, your path, your inner compass. That compass does not shout, it whispers, but its accuracy is unmatched. It knows what is yours. It knows where you belong, but you must be quiet enough to hear it. This is why the monks sit in stillness for hours, not because there is nothing to do, but because everything they do flows from silence. Action without alignment is chaos, but action born from inner silence is like water flowing down a mountain, effortless and unstoppable. The reason most people feel scattered is not because life is too busy, it is because they are trying to live without alignment. Their energy is fragmented. They chase too many things, say yes to too much, carry what isn't theirs, and eventually, the soul gets tired, not because of effort, but because of inauthenticity. When you live outside of alignment, everything is heavy. When you live in alignment, even the challenges become light, because you are no longer fighting yourself. So the path is not to do more, it is to do less, but with more truth. Fewer words, but more honesty. Fewer actions, but more integrity. Fewer connections, but deeper ones. Fewer goals, but each rooted in meaning. And what stops this? Fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of being alone. But fear cannot guide you to alignment. It can only point out where you are not free. Once you see that it is your responsibility to walk through it, no one else can do that for you. The doorway is narrow. It fits only one person at a time. You. To walk the path of alignment is to walk with courage. To be misunderstood, to be doubted, to be alone at times. But it is better to walk alone in truth than surrounded in illusion, because in truth, you will find the divine. In truth, you will find yourself. There is a beauty that lives in aligned souls. It is not loud, it is not flashy, it is quiet and unshakable. It does not seek attention, it radiates naturally. And that radiance does more for the world than 1,000 empty gestures. Because alignment is contagious. When one person lives in alignment, others feel it. They are reminded of something they forgot. They begin to wake up. Your alignment becomes a blessing, not just for you, but for the world. So you must ask yourself, what am I carrying that is not mine? What am I doing that is out of habit, not truth? What am I saying yes to out of fear, not love? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are sacred. They are the beginning of your return. You are not here to live by default. You are not here to perform a script written by someone else. You are here to remember who you are. And to move from that remembrance, that is alignment. That is where power lives. That is where peace lives. That is where you begin to walk, not just with feet, but with soul. So, listen again. Tomorrow is not safe. Let those words sink into your bones, not to scare you, but to wake you. Because once you are awake, you can choose to align. And once you are aligned, life no longer controls you. You become the one who moves through life, not rushed, not afraid, but rooted, present, aware, devoted. Let this moment be the turning point, the place where you stop waiting for life to push you. Let your own truth pull you instead. Let it pull you into action, into simplicity, into clarity, into the kind of life that leaves no part of you behind. Because alignment is not a destination, it is a practice, a devotion, a moment-by-moment return to what is real. And this moment, this breath, this awareness, that is the only place it begins. When a message from the divine says, tomorrow is not safe, most people immediately think of what might go wrong. They imagine disaster, calamity, or the sudden end of everything they hold dear. But those who walk the inner path understand something deeper. The danger is not always on the outside. The most dangerous thing is not the storm that may come. It is the time that is wasted. It is the purpose that is ignored. It is the power that remains asleep inside you. When the divine speaks of danger, it is often not about the world, but about your relationship with yourself. The true unsafe ground is within, when you delay your inner work. Because the longer you wait, the heavier it becomes. The more you postpone, the more life passes you by without you in it. Time is not something you have. Time is something you are constantly exchanging. You trade your time for decisions, for distractions, for thoughts, for people, for silence, or for noise. Every moment you are in a trade, and the question is, what are you receiving in return? When you understand that tomorrow is not a guarantee, you stop trading your hours for anything less than your soul's calling. You stop giving your life force to things that leave you empty. You begin to reclaim your attention, your breath, your purpose, not as a dramatic act, but as a quiet revolution, a return, a remembering. The great loss is not death. The great loss is not living while alive. It is moving through the day on autopilot. It is being busy, but not being present. It is waking up and going to sleep without having truly seen anything. Not the sunrise, not the people you love, not the inner voice that has been trying to reach you. That is the real danger, the subtle one, the silent one. And when tomorrow becomes uncertain, the soul sends an alarm to the body. Wake up now. When you postpone what matters, your inner fire begins to dim. You start to forget what you're capable of. You talk yourself out of dreams. You convince yourself that it's fine to wait, that someday you'll begin. But the truth is, someday does not exist. There is only today. There is only this moment. And the longer you wait to honor that, the more you will feel disconnected, dull, unfulfilled. The heart does not thrive on comfort. It thrives on courage. Many people want to feel alive, but they are not willing to burn what must be burnt. They want change, but they hold tightly to the very patterns that keep them small. They say they want purpose, but they give their attention to distractions. They say they want truth, but they run from silence. And still, life waits patiently. Life does not rush you, but it does not rush you. But it does not to punish you. It is to awaken you to the value of now. Think for a moment of the things you've been carrying. Old wounds, words you've never spoken, forgiveness you've never offered, forgiveness you've never allowed yourself to receive. Think of the dreams you've left in the corners of your mind, gathering dust, the ideas that excited you once but were buried beneath fear, the talents you've silenced because others didn't see them. All of these live in the shadow of postponement. They are waiting for your decision. And here is the truth that most avoid. If you do not choose to evolve, you are choosing to delay. And delay is not neutral. It is decay. When you pause your soul's growth, life does not wait. It moves on. The energy that was available today may not be available tomorrow. That moment of clarity, that insight, that burst of inspiration, it had its own time, its own life. And if you ignored it, you cannot expect it to return. The river does not flow backwards. So ask yourself, what am I postponing? What is the voice inside asking me to do that I keep pushing aside? Where am I waiting for life to give me permission when the truth is I must give it to myself? These are not casual questions. They are invitations. To ignore them is to continue sleepwalking. To face them is to begin awakening. The monks teach that there is no such thing as wasted time, only unobserved time. Every breath can be a teacher, every moment can be a mirror. But you must learn to see with the eyes behind the eyes, to listen not just with your ears, but with your soul. That level of presence transforms everything, because you stop waiting for life to change, and instead, you become the change. You become the one who no longer runs. You become the one who remembers that you are not here just to exist. You are here to live, fully and without apology. What stops people is not the lack of time, it is the illusion that more time is guaranteed. But the moment you accept that nothing is promised, your entire being begins to shift. You say what you've been holding in. You do what you've been delaying. You become bold, not reckless, but deeply rooted in purpose. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I never try? Regret is heavier than fear. Always. Fear is temporary, but regret lingers. Regret whispers at night. It shows you the faces of people you never spoke your heart to. It shows you the chances you didn't take, the kindness you held back, the inner work you avoided, the love you denied yourself. These are not small things. They shape the quality of your inner world, and your inner world is the only one you truly live in. So when you hear that tomorrow is not safe, let it strip you of hesitation. Let it break the chains of later. Let it be the sound that reminds you, life is now. Not after you fix everything, not after others approve, not after fear goes away. Now is the time to meditate on the truth you've been running from. Now is the time to sit in stillness and feel what you've been avoiding. Now is the time to write, to speak, to move, to train, to forgive, to begin again. Not because you are guaranteed more time, but because this breath is sacred, and it is yours. What you plant in this moment grows roots in your destiny. What you ignore in this moment becomes the weight you carry tomorrow. Life is not random. It is responsive. It gives back what you give it. If you offer half effort, you receive half results. If you offer delay, you receive discomfort. But when you offer presence, devotion, and courage, even in the smallest acts, life begins to open. Doors you never saw begin to appear. People begin to shift around you. The right moments begin to align. But that alignment can only meet you where you are. Not where you pretend to be. Not where you plan to be one day. Where you are now. So come back. Not just to your breath. Come back to your fire. Come back to your reason. Come back to your strength. You haven't lost it. You've only postponed it. But now is the time to remember. Everything that matters begins with a decision to stop delaying your own becoming. You will never feel fully ready, but readiness is not the goal. Willingness is. A willingness to walk through fear, a willingness to sit with discomfort, a willingness to grow without applause, a willingness to trust that your soul is wiser than your doubts. Because it is. So you breathe, you stand, you move, not because tomorrow is safe, but because now is powerful. You use your time not to escape, but to expand. You use your life not to impress, but to express. You use your gifts not to hoard, but to heal. And in doing so, you fulfill the very reason you were born,